Imagine a small-town diner's comforting hum abruptly silenced. All eyes fix on an elderly man with a prosthetic leg as a waitress coldly declares, "We don't serve people like you." This isn't just about coffee, it's about the unseen wounds of war, the sting of casual cruelty, and the unbreakable bond of brotherhood about to ignite a powerful, unforgettable response in this unsuspecting town. A silent storm of loyalty and remembrance is brewing. Tom Granger, a man etched by time and the brutal artistry of war, carried his history not just in the subtle hitch of his gait, the almost imperceptible way he favored his right leg, but in the very lines that webbed around his kind. Weary eyes. Those lines weren't just from age, they were maps of long-forgotten firefights, silent testaments to nights spent under unforgiving desert stars, watching over brothers who wouldn't all make it home. The phantom ache in his left leg, where the IED had stolen a piece of him in the harsh reality of Iraq, was a constant, low hum beneath the surface of his days, a physical echo of a moment that had irrevocably altered his life. Yet, he rarely spoke of it, his silence a shield against a world that often seemed ill-equipped to understand. His solitude wasn't born of bitterness, but of a quiet understanding that some burdens were best carried alone, their weight too heavy to share with those who hadn't stood in the same fire. His 2-mile trek to Sally's Cafe wasn't merely a quest for caffeine, it was a carefully constructed ritual, a daily anchor in the vast, often turbulent sea of his memories. Each familiar crack in the sidewalk, each meticulously straightened newspaper stand along the way, was a small, tangible connection to the present, a brief respite from the vivid, often unwelcome replays of the past that flickered behind his eyelids. The window booth at Sally's wasn't just a place to sit, it was his silent observatory, a space where he could watch the unhurried rhythm of small-town life unfold, a life he had risked everything to protect, even as he often felt like a ghost in its midst. He'd see young couples holding hands, oblivious to the fragility of peace, and the sight would sometimes twist a bittersweet knot in his chest, a reminder of the youthful dreams war had stolen from him and his brothers. His small, almost invisible acts of service, the way his calloused fingers would instinctively pick up a stray piece of litter, the deliberate effort to right a child's overturned tricycle, his quiet nod of reassurance to a harried mother, were not performed for praise. They were ingrained reflexes, a soldier's instinct to leave things better than he found them, a quiet continuation of a life dedicated to duty, even in the absence of command. He remembered a young private, barely out of high school, his face pale with fear during their first major engagement. Tom had placed a steady hand on his shoulder, the weight of his own experience a silent reassurance. "Just breathe, son," he'd said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. That young man hadn't made it through the deployment. Tom carried the weight of that loss, and countless others, a silent burden etched onto his soul. So, when the young waitress's cold words sliced through the diner's morning hum, they didn't just sting with personal rejection, they echoed with the dismissive tones he'd sometimes heard directed at returning veterans, the subtle implication that their sacrifices were somehow inconvenient, their presence a reminder of uncomfortable truths. It wasn't just about a denied cup of coffee, it was a reopening of old wounds, a stark reminder of the invisible battles he continued to fight, the daily struggle against the ghosts of war, the gnawing loneliness that often settled in the quiet corners of his life, the constant ache of knowing that a part of him remained forever on that distant battlefield. As he placed the crumpled bill on the counter, it wasn't just an offering of payment, it was a small, almost desperate offering of connection, a silent plea to be seen, to be acknowledged as a fellow human being, met with a chilling indifference that resonated with a deeper, more profound hurt. The derisive chuckle from the corner booth wasn't just a random act of cruelty, it was a sharp, visceral reminder of the casual disrespect that could be so easily directed at those who were perceived as different, as less than. Outside, the weight on his chest wasn't just metaphorical, it was a physical constriction, a tightening in his throat that mirrored the suffocating feeling of being an outsider in the very land he had sworn to defend. The laughter of the teenagers as they brushed past wasn't just youthful exuberance, it was a jarring, unintentional reminder of the vibrant life he had fought to preserve, a life that seemed to have no real place for the quiet, faded echoes of his own sacrifices. Leaning against the cold metal of the lamppost, the mundane sounds of the town swirling around him, Tom felt a profound sense of isolation, a stark contrast to the intense, life-affirming camaraderie he had once known. The unbreakable bond he had shared with men who understood the weight he carried, because they carried it too. The buzz of his antiquated flip phone in his pocket wasn't the insistent, demanding vibration of modern smartphones, it was a gentler, almost hesitant tremor, like a shy knock on a long-closed door. Usually, Tom preferred to let such unknown intrusions fade into silence, a digital world he never fully embraced. But the raw sting of the diner incident, the unexpected rawness of that public dismissal, had left him strangely vulnerable, a fragile tendril of hope perhaps still clinging to the possibility of some unseen understanding. So, he fumbled the phone open, his calloused fingers more accustomed to the grip of a rifle than the slick surface of technology, and saw the stark simplicity of the message: report received. Stand by. A wave of bewilderment washed over him, more potent than the lingering taste of unshed tears. Report what? Stand by for what? His mind, still sharp despite the years, cycled through recent events, searching for any action that might have warranted such a cryptic response. Had someone witnessed the cold exchange at the diner? Had a flicker of empathy in a stranger's eyes translated into some form of intervention he couldn't fathom? The low rumble of thunder that echoed in the distance wasn't just a meteorological event, it felt like a subtle underscoring of the mystery unfolding, a low growl hinting at a force moving beyond his immediate awareness, as he began his solitary trek back to his trailer. Each step on the unforgiving pavement a familiar reminder of his altered physicality, the message replayed in his mind, a small, persistent beacon in the fog of his hurt. Could it be a wrong number? A prank? Or something more? Reaching the familiar sanctuary of the park bench, the worn grooves in the wood a silent testament to countless moments of quiet contemplation, Tom pulled out his journal. The act of writing had always been a form of silent processing, a way to order the chaos of his thoughts and memories. But today, the words came slowly, each syllable weighted with the raw emotion of the morning. Turned away, he wrote, the letters slightly uneven, betraying the tremor that still lingered in his hand. No explanation. Just. Not welcome. He paused, the nib of his pen hovering over the page, the silence of the park broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant murmur of traffic. He thought of Sergeant Miller, his old medic, a man whose quiet competence had been a constant reassurance amidst the carnage. Miller would have had something wry to say about all this, a dark joke perhaps to cut through the bitterness. Miller's name, too, was etched in his journal, marked with a star. As he sat there, lost in the labyrinth of his memories and the enigma of the message, a young couple strolled past, their easy laughter a stark contrast to the turmoil within him. The woman's hushed whisper, "Something's wrong with that man," and the man's quick steering of her away, wasn't just a fleeting interaction, it was a sharp pinprick of isolation, a reminder of how easily he could be categorized and dismissed based on appearances. Back in the quiet of his trailer, the framed photograph of his Delta unit team seemed to watch him with silent understanding. He remembered Ruiz, their point man, fearless and always the first through the door. Ruiz's name bore a small cross in his journal. Each glance at the photo was a visceral reminder of the brotherhood he had known, a bond forged in the crucible of shared danger, a connection that transcended the superficial judgments of the outside world. The radio's droning report on Operation Guardian, a battle that had claimed the lives of several of his comrades, wasn't just background noise, it was a painful echo of a life lived on the razor's edge, a stark contrast to the mundane indifference he had encountered that morning. He snapped off the radio, the sudden silence amplifying the questions swirling in his mind. The cryptic message on his phone felt like a fragile thread of connection in the vast emptiness of his solitude. Who had sent it? Why? And what did "stand by" even mean? A flicker of something akin to hope, a feeling he hadn't recognized in a long time, began to stir within him, a quiet counterpoint to the lingering ache of rejection. The unmoving black SUV across the street, a silent sentinel in the growing twilight, took on a new significance. It wasn't just a random vehicle, it felt purposeful. As he whispered a familiar greeting to Colonel, the stray cat, the weight of his isolation felt momentarily lighter. Replaced by a fragile anticipation, a sense that perhaps, just perhaps, he wasn't entirely alone in this. The wind that rattled the windowpane seemed to carry a different tone now, not just mournful, but almost expectant, as if the quiet storm brewing within him was about to find an unexpected ally. The arrival of the black SUVs wasn't just the arrival of vehicles, it was the silent, powerful entrance of a force to be reckoned with. The low rumble of their engines wasn't just a sound, it was a deep, resonant growl that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the sleepy town, a promise of an impending reckoning. The synchronized opening of the doors wasn't just a coordinated movement. It was a display of military precision, a silent language that spoke of discipline and unwavering unity. The men who stepped out weren't just tall figures, they were sculpted from years of rigorous training, their broad shoulders and steady gazes radiating an aura of quiet strength and unwavering resolve. Their silence wasn't just an absence of noise, it was a palpable intensity, a focused energy that seemed to compress the very air around them. Dean Harper's arrival wasn't just the entrance of a former commander, it was the return of a leader, a man whose presence commanded respect and whose loyalty was as unyielding as steel. His walk towards the diner wasn't just a physical movement, it was a deliberate, purposeful stride, each step carrying the weight of a shared history and an unspoken oath. The frozen conversations and paused movements within the diner weren't just a reaction to their arrival, it was a collective intake of breath, a moment where the ordinary fabric of the morning was torn by the undeniable presence of something extraordinary. The young waitress's ashen face wasn't just a sign of fear, it was the dawning realization of the profound misjudgment she had made. Harper's placement of the photograph and the bronze star wasn't just an act of remembrance, it was a powerful, visual statement, a tangible representation of the man she had so carelessly dismissed. His words, "This man stood between us and death more times than I can count," weren't just a statement of fact. They were a testament to Tom's valor, a public declaration of his heroism that cut through the diner's stunned silence like a knife. The young waitress's stammered apologies weren't merely a string of mumbled words, they were a desperate, almost visceral attempt to rewind time, to somehow snatch back the cold indifference she had so carelessly flung at Tom. Her wide, panicked eyes darted between the imposing figures of the Navy SEALs and the stunned, suddenly hostile faces of the townsfolk, a dawning horror creeping into her expression as the true weight of her misjudgment began to crush her. Harper's simple, yet profoundly resonant reply, "Now you know," wasn't just an acknowledgement of her belated understanding, it was a quiet, almost biblical pronouncement of truth, a stark and irreversible unveiling of the reality she had so blindly, so arrogantly ignored. The air in the diner seemed to thicken with the unspoken condemnation of her actions. The SEALs' deliberate, almost ritualistic order of a full breakfast wasn't simply a matter of satisfying their appetites. It was a powerful, symbolic act of reclaiming the space that had been tainted by Tom's rejection, a silent, unified declaration that their brother belonged here, that his presence was not just tolerated, but valued and fiercely respected. Each clink of silverware, each deliberate bite, felt like a small act of defiance against the casual cruelty Tom had endured. The thick envelope Harper placed on the counter wasn't just a collection of crumpled bills and loose change. It was a tangible, almost sacred representation of Tom's quiet generosity, a silent, irrefutable rebuke to the callousness he had faced. It spoke volumes of a man who gave freely without expectation, a stark contrast to the petty prejudice he had encountered. Then, the hushed testimonies began, each anecdote a fragile, yet resilient thread weaving together a rich and intricate tapestry of Tom's unseen kindness. The man near the window, his voice thick with a newfound shame, didn't just recall Tom bringing blankets during the power outage, he remembered the quiet concern in Tom's eyes as he checked on his elderly mother, the gruff reassurance he offered, and the way he had disappeared back into the storm-swept night without a word of expectation. The woman whose tire Tom had changed didn't just recount a roadside assistance, she choked back tears as she described the way Tom's weathered hands, despite their age and past injuries, had worked with surprising strength and efficiency. The gentle smile he offered her frightened child, and the firm refusal of any payment, accompanied by a simple, "Just glad you're safe," the cafe owner, his face a mask of mortified realization, wasn't just worried about lost revenue or a tarnished reputation. He was grappling with the sickening understanding that such blatant disrespect had occurred under his roof, that he, in his absence, had inadvertently allowed such prejudice to take root. Harper's sharp, unwavering words weren't just a reprimand, they were a stark, almost prophetic reminder of the profound responsibility he bore for the moral compass of his establishment, a chilling implication of the deep stain this incident would leave. The elderly woman's gentle revelation about the Memorial Day flags wasn't just a sentimental aside, it painted a poignant picture of Tom's solitary pre-dawn ritual, a selfless act of honoring the fallen performed in the quiet solitude before the town awoke, a testament to a grief and respect that ran deeper than any public display. The SEAL's quiet, yet steel-edged retort to the waitress's flimsy excuse about Tom's appearance wasn't just a correction of her misguided judgment. It was a powerful, almost visceral condemnation of the superficiality of her prejudice, a stark and unforgiving contrast to the immeasurable worth of the man she had so carelessly dismissed. The deepening silence that enveloped the diner wasn't just an absence of sound, it was a heavy, almost suffocating atmosphere of collective introspection, a dawning awareness of the profound misjudgment they had all, in their own ways, witnessed, and perhaps, through their silence, even condoned. Harper's final words, hanging in the air like an unspoken oath, weren't just a polite departure. They were a powerful, unwavering declaration of the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood, a fierce promise that the loyalty forged in the crucible of war would always transcend the ignorance and indifference of the outside world. It was a silent vow that Tom would never again face such disrespect alone, a profound and enduring justice that resonated far beyond the simple act of a denied cup of coffee, echoing in the stunned silence of a town forced to confront its own blind spots. The low rumble of the returning black SUVs wasn't just the sound of engines, it was the resonant heartbeat of a promise kept, a tangible echo of the unwavering loyalty that bound these men together. Their silent, almost reverent arrival outside Tom's unassuming trailer wasn't merely a second visit, it was a pilgrimage of brotherhood, a quiet, steadfast vigil that spoke volumes of their unwavering commitment. Their vehicles, instruments of silent power, stood as sentinels, a protective cordon around the solitude Tom had inhabited for so long. Tom's hand, gnarled and bearing the silent testament of years of service, trembled slightly as he reached for the doorknob, his worn leather journal, a confidant and chronicler of his life, still clutched tightly. The act of opening the door wasn't just a physical gesture, it was a hesitant opening of himself, a crack in the wall he had unknowingly built around his heart, a tentative step back towards the warmth of a connection he had thought might be lost forever. The quiet embrace that passed between Tom and Harper transcended a simple greeting. It was a powerful, unspoken reunion, a tangible manifestation of a bond forged in the crucible of shared sacrifice, a silent acknowledgement that time and distance held no dominion over the deep, abiding loyalty of men who had faced death together. In that brief, heartfelt clasp, years of unspoken understanding flowed between them, a silent reassurance that Tom was not alone, that he had never truly been forgotten. Harper's words, spoken with a quiet sincerity that resonated deep within Tom's weary soul, "We've got a situation, Tom, and we need your expertise," weren't just a polite request for assistance. They were a profound recognition of Tom's enduring value, a heartfelt reaffirmation that his hard-won skills, his invaluable experience, and his unique perspective were still needed, still respected, still vital to the brotherhood he had once led. A flicker of the old fire, long banked beneath layers of solitude and disappointment, rekindled within Tom's eyes. His simple question, mission parameters, wasn't just an inquiry for details, it was the re-emergence of the seasoned warrior, the quiet command of a leader ready to answer the call once more. The weight of the past few days seemed to lift infinitesimally from his shoulders. Harper's reply, delivered with a quiet gravity that underscored its significance: rebuild, restore, remind, wasn't just a set of objectives, it was a mission statement that resonated deep within the core of Tom's being. It spoke to a purpose beyond his own quiet existence, a chance to channel his pain and experience into something meaningful, something restorative, as the slow, unmistakable smile spread across Tom's weathered face. It wasn't just a change in expression, it was a dawning of hope, a visible lifting of the shadows that had clung to him. It was a silent promise to himself and to his brothers that he was ready to step back into the fray, to stand shoulder to shoulder once more with the men who understood him without words. His step forward, across the threshold of his humble trailer, wasn't just a physical movement, it was a symbolic stride into a new chapter, a reclaiming of his place not just as a retired veteran living in quiet solitude, but as a vital, respected member of a brotherhood that would always, unequivocally, have his back. The weight of the world seemed a little lighter, the future a little brighter. Illuminated by the unwavering loyalty of the men who stood waiting for him, not with pity, but with respect and a shared purpose. The faded American flag outside Tom's trailer symbolized a life of quiet, unwavering service and sacrifice, seen and unseen. This story goes beyond a denied coffee, exploring deep human connection, enduring loyalty, and the quiet strength of those who protect our freedoms. It reminds us that true heroism lies in selfless acts and underscores the importance of remembering the often unseen battles of those who serve. Ultimately, it's a testament to unbreakable brotherhood, where fierce loyalty and remembrance offer a profound justice that echoes far beyond a single act of denial.